Well, welcome. Listen, if you're new to church today, you come in here week 6 of our Top 10 series where we're cracking through the 10 Commandments, because sometimes we look at 10 Commandments, they were given, about 4,000 years ago to a different group of people at a different time, but really the reality is they're relevant to what we're doing today. So we're going through one at a time. So we have all these Roman numerals up here, and we have little symbols with them to help kind of maybe trigger, so down the road you can remember too what they were and maybe why they matter. Now, when you go through some lists in the Bible, sometimes I make them into checklists to kind of gauge how I'm doing with everything. How am I checking off there as far as being a good disciple of Jesus, good Jesus follower? So with the 10 Commandments, sometimes it's hit and miss with a lot of them, okay? So it depends on the day, depends on the time, depends on the mood, depends on how many kids are around me. So you start with number 1, it's love God first, put God first, okay? No other gods before me. You have a heart there to represent the love. For the most part, I think I do pretty good. But then something creeps up, those stressful situations, all of it, you may not notice that God is first in my life. So I'm not sure I can check it all the time off my list. Number 2, don't create any idols or graven images. It's taking something man-made and putting it before God and worshiping before Him. I think I do a pretty good job of worshiping God first, but I admit I struggle with getting in the Word throughout the week sometimes. And it's because I put maybe family as an idol first, or kids as an idol first, or sports as an idol first, and so it doesn't, or sleep as an idol first. So it does interfere sometimes. So some days I can check it off, some days not so much. 3, do not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. It's not just, I don't have a problem saying OMG, using God's name like that, or Jesus Christ in a flippant way. I don't. It's just never part of how I was raised. But when we talk about the shirt, we wear the name of Christ. So I am a representative, not just by the words I say, but the things that I do. And I think for the most part, I think people can see Jesus in me, but I'm not sure my kids always see Jesus in me, because at home, maybe like the rest of you, I feel a little too safe at home to not be as aware of how I'm acting all the time. So sometimes I can check it off, sometimes not so much. Number 4, keep the Sabbath. It's a bed there, get some rest. Not good. I'm not good at that. There are seasons I will take rest, but there are times I don't, and so I can't really check it off. Number 5, honor your father and mother. I was a suck-up. I was a brown-noser. I was a pleaser. My parents didn't have a lot of problems with me, and it was more not because I thought it was the Jesus thing to do to keep them happy. It was, if they're happy, they're off my back. So it wasn't for the right reasons, right? But today, there are times where I'm more respectful than others. So some days I can check it off, some days I can't. But when it comes to number 6, I have no problems with murder. Haven't killed no one yet. Don't plan to. So really, I can check off murder. These shall not murder off my list. Got a little knife there represented. I've never had an issue with killing people, just so you know. My background check's pretty clean on that one, okay? And so when I come here and say number 6 is murder, you're like, okay, sermon's over. We know. We're good. See you next week. Stay sitting. Getting too antsy there for me, okay? So there is that first kind of killing. All right, there's that physical killing. Murder in itself is the killing of someone who maybe didn't deserve it, an innocent individual. In the Bible, we interpret it, translate it sometimes as "thou shalt not kill," but it's dealing with murder itself. All right, so when you deal with murder, we're dealing with taking the life of an innocent individual or someone who didn't deserve it. Now, the reason why God had to put that up, because in our culture, we really don't have to deal with it that much. We talk about murder. It's on TV all the time. When people go on a trial, murder is not on trial. It's whether or not the person committed murder. Because I think generally across the board, we can agree that murder is wrong. But in the context of when God gave the 10 Commandments, it wasn't always considered that way. It was getting out of hand. And I'm not trying to paint a picture that life was really, really rough. It was like the movie The Purge all the time, where people could kill whenever and no consequences. In that culture, the family was the core unit of society. So when it came to carrying out justice, the family was responsible for carrying out justice. It was called blood vengeance. So if someone from your clan, someone from your family would kill someone in my family, it was understood that someone in my family had the responsibility of killing off that person or someone else. And it was considered right and just. It sounds a little bit mafia mob-ish right now, okay? You whack someone in my family, you'll end up in some concrete. All right? That was the mindset. Now, the reason why God had to speak into this, though, is because it was getting a little out of hand. It wasn't just murder for murder. It was, you steal my sheep, I'll kill you. You steal my goat, I'll kill you. You poke my eye out, I will kill you. Okay? That's why in the Bible, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, where there's some case laws where it's building off of the Ten Commandments, you see things like eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life. Because God's speaking to a world where the justice wasn't always equal to the crime. So he was setting the stage back, resetting the people. That was what God was, that's why he had to say, you shall not murder. He was trying to set them back straight from getting a little bit crazy in their culture. But in our culture, we don't have the problem with understanding the value or the lack of value in murder. So with that said, we tend to just blow by that verse. Thou shalt not murder. You shall not murder somebody, because it's not something I have a problem with. A story in the Bible, and there's all kinds of murder in the Bible, because this Bible is full of a lot of rough people who still find Jesus. Queen Athaliah in 2 Kings 11, 1-3. When Athaliah, the mother of Ahaziah was the king, when she saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family. She went on to kill off all the royal family, all her descendants, so she could ascend to the throne. Now, the story goes on that one of the princesses took one of the young princes and hid him for 6 years till he grew up, and then he eventually took the throne from grandma. But grandma had a little issue. But so you have this murder, this unjust killing, this physical killing that was taking place throughout the Bible. If it was that simple, we could leave today. But it's not. Then Jesus walks into the scene. And you notice with Jesus, he doesn't always make it simpler, he takes it deeper. And Jesus speaks to murder in Matthew 5, 21-22. You've heard it was said to people long ago, you shall not murder. And anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone says to his brother or sister, Raka, which is like saying you're a fool, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fires of hell. When it comes to the ethic of Jesus, he wasn't always concerned about your actions. He was more concerned with the heart and the mind, what was behind the actions that would eventually come out in actions. He says in Luke 6:45, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Prime example is King Saul. Back in 1 Samuel 18, a little bit of background here. King Saul's army was up against Goliath, this 9-foot Philistine warrior. No one stepped up till David, this little shepherd boy, stepped in and defeated Goliath with just a slingshot. So David proves himself as being a worthy leader. And so we have this story here out of 1 Samuel 18, starting at verse 5. Whatever mission Saul sent David on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased the troops and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, Goliath, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and timbrels and lyres. As they danced, they sang, and they sang this to King Saul, not to David. Saul has slain his thousands, but David is 10,000s. That couldn't go over very well at all. Saul was very angry, and this refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only 1,000. What more can he get but take my kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Do you see this is what Jesus is addressing? He's talking about that anger that fumes and stirs up inside you that you can't get rid of, that eventually, after a while, if not dealt with, it's going to make its way out in some way. And it did with Saul that very next day. Verse 10, the next day, an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it at him, saying to himself, I'll pin David against the wall. But David eluded him twice. Because Jesus deals with the heart before the body, he's just as concerned what's going on inside, because the actions that are going to come out. You deal with the heart, you deal with the mind, you probably spare yourself injuring some other people. So Jesus is dealing with a second, I'm going to call it a second kind of killing. This is the mental killing, which leads to verbal killing, or even worse. In this case, he was trying to off David, literally finish him off. Not just say bad things. But listen, we can, with our words, do some killing ourselves. We can kill family. We can destroy family with our words. We can destroy relationships in our own home. We can destroy other relationships too when it comes to telling lies and spreading rumors. My wife shares with me, whenever they hire somebody at their work, she always goes on Facebook and checks out the account of the people who they're hiring, because she wants to know what kind of person they're getting when others aren't necessarily looking. But I can post all kinds of stuff on your Facebook page and make you look terrible, unfounded things. I can stir you up and getting you responding in very harmful ways, and I can ruin your career. I can kill your career. I won't, but I can. Our actions have that capacity to do such a thing. You can be a dream killer too. For those of you who grew up in a home where dad kept telling you, you'll never amount to anything. Mom said the same things. And so you dealt with self-worth issues for your entire life and never really achieved what you thought you could. I'm sorry. But we have that kind of power with our words, which are rooted in an anger and a hatred in our hearts that is not dealt with, and eventually it's going to make its way out. In our society, there are actually, I looked it up, let me get the number right, there are 52 different types of murder. Not how you killed someone, but legally how they are judged and valued and people are accused. 52 different types. So when I say murder, well, it's a pretty loaded word. There's many different options. Same thing with Jesus or God. When he says you shall not murder, it's not just referring to one type of murder. If I want to oversimplify things, of those 52, there's really 4 different main types that things get categorized into. There's a first degree and second degree murders. These are planned out, strategized, and you carry it out over time. There's also the voluntary manslaughter, which weren't planned, but there was a heated passion, and people would say, the punishment is a little less because you didn't plan it out. People would say you were so stirred up that no normal human being could have sustained themselves and kept from killing someone in that moment. So you do get a punishment, it's just not as bad. And then there's involuntary manslaughter, where you didn't mean to kill somebody, but you did. And there are still consequences if you're convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Yes, much less than first and second degree murder, but just the same. Here's why I spent the last depressing minute clarifying those. Because when I say murder, it can mean one of those many things. Without me being explicit, you would have no way of knowing what type of murder I'm referring to. But the Hebrew word for murder didn't just apply to the physical murder. It also applied to the involuntary manslaughter that we talk about in our culture as well. The intentional acts and the unintentional acts that lead to the killing of somebody is equally wrong. Let me try to illustrate with you with a pretty cool Bible story I found in Acts 16. Background a little bit. This is about a guy named Paul. Paul was a Jewish convert to Christianity. He was pretty outspoken, and he actually became really the first missionary evangelist church planter in the New Testament. Traveled all over the Mediterranean Sea area planting churches. And he'd always take a partner with him, so he wasn't alone. And in all this, in the Roman society and in some Jewish societies, he tended to get in some trouble for talking about Jesus. And so it wasn't uncommon for Paul to end up in jail. In Acts 16, he and his friend Silas are in jail. That's the setting. Listen to the story if you can follow along if you want. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, because that's what you do in prison, right? Singing and praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prisons were shaken. At once the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. This was not an uncommon thing because as the prison guard, if people escaped under your watch, your sentence, your punishment was death. So he basically took it upon himself. I'm going to kill myself so I don't have to wait for someone to come do it to me. That's what he's thinking. And all this time, Paul and Silas are in their cells seeing this happen. What do? A couple days ago, I was at Pleasant High School at 6:50 in the morning for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Any kid that will be at a school for a Bible study at 6:50 is either crazy or loves Jesus. I think a little bit of both. But there's like 30 kids there. It's pretty impressive. The most impressive thing is that the leadership team is primarily Dayspring kids. That's pretty cool. I knew I was going to preach on this thing about murder, so I was trying to work on some of my thoughts. So I did a little survey with them, started asking them questions. And the word I used was this idea of snitching, okay? Because I hear it a lot. I ain't no snitch. I'm not a snitch. I'm not going to snitch. Why would you snitch, okay? And for those of you who don't know, we never used that word growing up. That was like tattletale or, squealing or telling on somebody. And I knew there was a phrase that went with snitching, and so I was talking to Pastor Dylan in the hallway, and I said, I cannot think of what it is. He said, I know it rhymes. And I think it's snitches end up in ditches, is what I said. He's like, no, man, snitches get stitches. Like, oh, I was a little more violent. It's my Amish Mennonite upbringing, I guess. That if you snitch, you end up in a ditch somewhere. Okay. But that's what I really said. So we have this idea that snitching is a horrible thing. And I asked the teens at FCA, I said, how many of you think that snitching is good? I don't think one hand went up, except for one kid that got punched. No, I'm kidding. I don't think one hand went up. I said, so let me give you some scenarios. And I want to hear from you. I said, I want to hear, is snitching okay in this situation? So I'd give them a situation, I'd say, put your heads down, because I don't want anybody to get hurt for saying they would snitch. I said, raise your hand. Yes, I would snitch. No, I won't snitch. Or, that was my third one. It's spelled out E-H-H-H-H, okay? So I was going to share what happened with them, with you guys, but after a while, I'm like, you know what, let's just do that. I'm going to do it here with you, okay? You're like, no, we're leaving, okay? I'm going to give you a scenario. And I'm not doing this to prove a point, because I'm going to have you close your heads. How about close? We need a doctor here if we have some open heads, okay? I'm going to have you close your eyes and bow your heads, because this is not for me. This is for you. I want you to actively, intensively process what you would do in this situation. And I will do it. I will say the examples like I told the teens, but then I will adultify it, okay? Hey, I make up that word. It's cool. I can make up words. I will give it another example that might happen in an adult world. And I want to know, yes, I would snitch. No, I wouldn't snitch. Okay? All right, so close your heads and your eyes. Yeah, you know what I mean. All right? And I want you to do this because I want to protect your privacy. You're getting this on video, right, Zach? Just pan all around and get everything. No, I'm kidding, okay? Totally kidding. Okay? This is for you. I want you to process what would you do? Because we'll finish the story of Paul and Silas, but I want you to get here, okay? Come with me. Okay, this is the teen version. I'll give you an adult version. You're sitting in class, and your friend beside you has their study guide open on the floor, and they're cheating. Would you snitch? Or if you're an adult, your friend who is a coworker is lying on their time card. Do you tell your boss? Okay? Those are your two situations. So, yes, I would snitch. Raise your hand. Hands down. No, I would not snitch. Hands down. Okay, you wishy-washy people. That's cool. All right. In other words, there's more. There's maybe more things you'd want to weigh. I get that. Okay, that's the first one. Second one. Teen version. Your friend is cheating on his girlfriend. Your friend is cheating on her boyfriend. Do you tell the person being cheated on? Adult version. Your sibling is cheating on your in-law. They're cheating on their wife or their husband. Do you tell your in-law? Okay? Yes, I would tell them. No, I would not tell them. In other words, give me time to pray about it. Okay, hands down. Okay, heads up. Responses were very similar. And so because we're so big here, what was great about that setting is that I could ask questions. And they were more than happy to explain their answers, even though they didn't know what each other answered, I don't think. Okay, so I asked them, I said, in the first one, for the most part, the bulk of the people who took the risk and actually did this exercise said they would not snitch on their friend who's cheating on the test or their friend who is cheating on their time card. So I said, why would you not snitch on them? And I got 4 primary answers, okay? Answers were, it doesn't directly affect me, okay? Second answer was, it's not hurting anyone. Third one was, I don't want to ruin our friendship by snitching on them. And the fourth one, this guy was sitting right here. He was very, very blunt. He's like, listen, they can dig their own grave. All right, thanks for your honesty. We'll pray. Fellowship Christian Actions. Okay, yeah. I mean, I appreciate his honesty. It's like, in other words, it doesn't apply to me. It's not my life. It's not my quiz. If they get in trouble, they get in trouble. That's not my job. Okay? But on the second one, more people would snitch with that girl or that guy or the in-law who's being cheated on. So I asked the teens again, why would you snitch then? You said snitching is a bad thing, but why would you do it there? And the first answer was very clear, because someone's getting hurt. But the primary reason that somebody said they wouldn't still was, I don't want to ruin our relationship with my sibling or my friend. So there are caveats. There are reasons why we would speak up or not speak up. But listen, if you look at your heart of hearts, there's a few things that keep us from snitching. The reason we do snitch is if somebody's getting hurt. But can you take a look for a second? What about the person who's doing the wrong? Have you ever considered how they are being hurt by their own actions? And I shared that with the teens. All of a sudden, the mindset started to change a little bit. The conversation turned. What happens with a young man or young woman who's cheating on the test in school? Well, it's just a test. It's no big deal. But the test becomes an exam. And the exam becomes a college entry exam. And then it becomes lying on your time card. And it could lead to embezzlement and something worse that could lead, you don't know, but we can't, if we create a life where cheating works, why would they ever stop? But you could have spoken up and maybe helped them stop. Or the person who's cheating on this, they've got that one pretty quick. You know what? They're starting to learn that that's how I treat women. That's how I treat men. It's okay to have 2 or 3 girlfriends or 2 or 3 boyfriends at the same time. It might work in high school. It does not work in marriage. But if they aren't confronted on it in high school, it becomes a way of life come marriage. And don't forget about the fact of how your brother or your sister who's in an affair right now, how it's going to ruin their family, what it's going to do to their kids. If he gets someone else pregnant, she gets pregnant by someone else, what kind of conflicts going to cause in that family with another baby involved? Financial difficulties, adding other kids that aren't yours with child support and stuff. Listen, it can get messy. What's it going to do to that person who's doing the cheating? So why is snitching bad? Primarily, you don't want to ruin your relationship with that person. You're afraid. And then there's a second one that no one will say, but I know because I know. Because I know I'm doing something wrong too. And if I start snitching on them, I know they'll start snitching on me. So I'm protecting myself. Who am I to judge them when I know I'm a mess and no one else sees it? This is the third type of murder, third type of killing. This is the involuntary manslaughter. This is the silent killing where we hurt someone. We don't mean to murder them. But because of our intentional silence and inactivity, we play not a passive role, we play an active role in the death of something in their life. Maybe not their physical death, but possibly the death of their soul, the death of their family, the death of their future. Our silence, our inactivity can actively play a part in that. And now all of a sudden, I can't so quickly check off number 6, command, off my list of things I'm doing so well, can I? So here you have Paul and Silas sitting in a prison cell. It's night. They can probably see outside because the moon's shining out, but there's no light inside. We see that because the lights are going to come on in a little bit. What's the conversation? Because there's other prisoners here too. What's the conversation? They see this guy taking a sword, about to thrust it into his stomach. What are they saying? If he kills himself, we're out of here. Should we say something? We're still here. Listen, if we don't say anything, we walk out. It's not our responsibility. It's his life. It doesn't affect me. It's not hurting anybody but himself. Verse 28, Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourself. We're all here." The jailer called for the lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. And he brought them out of the prison and asked them, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Not thank you. What must I do to be saved? They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and all the others in his house. He took them home. At that hour of night, the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then immediately he and his entire household were baptized. The jailer brought them into his house and set a meal before them. He was filled with joy because he had come to believe in God, he and his entire household. And when it was daylight, the magistrate sent the officers to the jailer and with this order, "Release those men." The jailer told Paul, "The magistrates have ordered that you and Silas should be released. Now you can leave. Go in peace." All of a sudden, this taboo of snitching turned into life-saving. Snitching spoke life into this jailer. The argument, well, it doesn't involve me. It's not hurting anyone but himself. Really? That happens. There are kids without a dad that night. There's a wife without a husband that night. And there are generations of grandchildren and great-grandchildren who have never been affected by a dad, and aunts and uncles who came to a relationship with Jesus Christ because Paul saw this man as Christ saw this man. Was not so concerned about his freedom, was concerned with this man's life, and was not willing to sit on the sidelines and be a part of this silent murder, to be a part of this involuntary manslaughter of this man, even though most of the people in this world would probably say, "But I'm free." And who knows what it would have done to Paul and Silas's ministry. Where now silence as deceit and deception becomes an active part of their story now. What might they have done to stay out of prison? What might they have done to get away from people if now lack of integrity becomes a pattern of the things that they do just to survive? And story gets out. See, sometimes speaking life into someone involves some very difficult decisions. I'm not here for a second saying speaking into someone, doing the snitching or speaking life isn't going to hurt, isn't going to be a struggle. But when you look at how it affects a person right now and has the capacity to affect generations of people, why doesn't it change our perspective on how we deal with wrongdoing? So listen, I'm a firm believer that we can be a church, not just known for telling on people and turning people over to authorities, but we'll speak life in very difficult ways because we value all people, every generation, every phase of life. Every walk of life, every background deserves our activity and not to passively stand on the sidelines and watch their souls be crushed and watch their spirits rot and watch generation after generation fall further and further away from their Savior because we are so concerned about protecting ourselves rather than being concerned with their eternity. So let me give you a few tools I think that'll help as far as approaching someone and speaking life, speaking the hard kind of life in a person. First of all, approach the offender first. This comes right out of Matthew chapter 18, where Jesus is explaining how do you deal with someone in the church who offends you. Here's what he says. I didn't put it in my notes. I'll read it up here for you. If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. In my home growing up, this never happened. That's a nice way of saying in my home now, this never happens. When kids see a sibling doing something wrong, they never go say, you may want to stop that. Mom! You'll never guess what Bo did! Yeah, it doesn't work, right? But see, God's more concerned with the heart, right? He's more concerned with changing this because this thing lasts. If you approach them one-on-one, they might actually change. And then they may go to the boyfriend or the girlfriend or their spouse and repent. And they may go to their boss and tell them and try to make recompensate them for what they have stolen. That can happen. It won't easily happen, but that's what God wants. First thing, you approach the individual, the offender first. If they don't change, make sure you verify your facts. If you approach someone for something that's wrong, chances are they're going to lie to you about it. Sometimes you say, I don't care, it's nothing wrong with that. Make sure you have your facts first, because with false information, you can destroy them and destroy your witness to them and to others. Just like Wikipedia is a bad place to go for information, do research for a paper, Facebook is a horrible place. And there are some people that you know that are a horrible place to get information from. Make sure you know what you're talking about before you go snitch or go tell an authority. Which is the next part here. Listen, check your motives. When I tattled on my sister and brother, and I did that 2 or 3 times in my life, when I tattled on them, it wasn't to help them. Because if mom and dad were spanking them, guess who wasn't getting spanked? If I got them involved, if I told them for something they were doing bad, maybe the thing I just did didn't seem so bad after all. Listen, if you're just telling on someone to get a job promotion, if you're telling on someone because you love to have information, if you're telling on someone to get back at them for something they did to you, don't do it. Now, you might save their marriage by doing it, but they know why you're doing it. Pray before you do it. Pray that God lets you see them like you see them. So that when you go to an authority to get them to change, it's not because you're trying to get something for you, it's because you're trying to speak life into them. That's the opposite of murder. Speaking life. Last of all, because there will probably come a time, even if you don't have to go talk to someone right now, where you will need to approach somebody, start loving them now. Luke 10, 27, 28, Jesus answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus replied, do this and you will live. You never know who you're going to have to confront. You never know who you're going to have to make a hard step to speak life into. It's easier if they know you love them to hear those very difficult, life-changing words from you, or hear that you went to someone else to help speak those very difficult, life-changing words into them. Love everyone now. Insofar as it concerns you, live at peace with everyone, not just because it makes your life better, because if you have to approach them or if they have to approach you, you know you're doing it and you know you're being approached out of love. If you're new here, when I conclude sermons, a lot of times I just give you like a minute of quiet just to think about maybe something you have to do. This isn't one of those sermons because it probably wasn't long into this conversation you already knew who you had talked to. So what I want to do to close is I want to pray for you, that you would have the courage to speak life and hold true to the sixth command, you shall not murder, lest we become bystanders and passively allow people to kill their souls.